Foul. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Urías fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is one back. Walk the ball. Rip Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by special guest Steven Nelson, host of Intentional Talk, also part of the play-by-play team for Friday Night Baseball on Apple TV. Steven, I appreciate you joining us. It's been a weird sort of a season, lockout, then a quick start. How are you sort of settling into the baseball season a few weeks in?
Jeff, first and foremost, thanks for having me on. It's great to connect digitally anyway, and be a part of this. You do an awesome job, not blowing or pumping tires here. Secondly, I think the theme for life, for me anyway, is just survive. You as a father of 3 know this. I am a recent father of 1. Firstborn is almost 9 months. And so that, with the lockout, then we're back on shortened spring training. Let's go. And oh, by the way, Friday Night Baseball every single week. It's kind of like survival day. But all that being said, it's a very blessed existence that I have. So I've no complaints, but yeah, hanging on.
I mean, just from one of the reasons that I love chatting with folks like yourself is, and we'll get to some specific questions here, is just to get kind of like a national perspective. So often our show is just Dodger focused. That's all we do. All we think about, all we talk about is the Dodgers and whoever they're playing. I'd love for you, for a guy who talks about the league as a whole for a living. I mean, are there trends that you've seen over the first few weeks? Are there observations at just sort of a macro level from Major League Baseball that jump out to you in these first few weeks?
Yeah, and it's not an original thought. I am surprised a little bit at just how down offenses are right now. You also want to give respect to a few things, just the circumstances that all these professionals are going through as humans and athletes, with the things we mentioned, lockout and the shortened spring training, inability to communicate or rehab in some cases during that lockout. And then now they're kind of thrust in a situation, condensed time, facing the nastiest stuff that we've ever seen as baseball fans. So I trying to be patient and kind of keep that perspective, but the early season struggles, or the degree to which everybody seems to be struggling, is kind of taken me aback. But I think I'm very just trying to maintain perspective of the alternative, which is not having anything. The fact that we have baseball is awesome. And there are a lot of great storylines kind of nationwide. And I think the Dodgers are kind of at the epicenter. I mean, you know this, and being a part of that fan base and following that organization, it's no different than any year of last, forever. It's the Dodgers, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I joke, like, the first 20 years of my life, the Dodgers won 1 playoff game. So it's almost bizarre for me to think back. Like, I think of somebody who's like a 13-year-old, and basically all they've ever known as a Dodger fan is the Dodgers winning the NL West and basically being World Series favorites. And yet that wasn't, like, I was born in the gap between those things. I was born, right as 88 was wrapping up, and then it was sort of like we had to wait a long time. So it's a bizarre experience for the Dodgers.
That's an awesome thing to bring up. It's kind of like the New England sports fans. So there was a generation where all they knew was the curse of the Bambino, and then now there's a generation where all they know is success in every sport. The Red Sox, the Patriots, so on and so forth. And me growing up in Southern California, I grew up a diehard Laker fan. My dad and I would go to the Great Western Forum all the time, but I was on the heels of Showtime as that was winding down, and Shaq and Kobe. So I would always have to explain to folks, like when they ask, "Oh, who do you root for?" I'm like, "I'm a Laker fan." Like, bandwagoner. I'm like, no. The first jerseys I had were like Sedale Threatt and Anthony Wheeler and Sam Perkins. Like, no, I had to earn these stripes, So it's just kind of it's kind of wild how where you're born maybe alters the way that you view your favorite teams. You have a deeper appreciation for where the Dodgers are right now.
Totally. Yeah, and I got an Eddie Jones jersey. That was my first Lakers jersey. So, it wasn't I've got a Kobe jersey, but it was the second one. So, I mean, along those lines, I'm curious, as a guy who covers the league.
Eddie and Van Exel were cold. Eddie and Nick Van Exel were cold.
That was fun. There's a part of, even as a Laker fan today, that we wish we could go back to those days a little bit. On the Dodgers, I mean, like, as you talk about the league as a whole, just big picture, the Dodgers, like, have they become a villain? I mean, I talked to lots of people that now I feel like think about the Dodgers in the same way they think about the Lakers, which is, oh yeah, big money. Like, we're the Yankees of 20 years ago. Is that do you think that's a fair representation?
I think it's accurate in pointing out that that's the stereotype. I think if people can objectively view the game in the Dodgers, then they would understand that what Andrew Friedman has built is truly perhaps the smartest organization in baseball. Whenever folks ask me, like, oh, who would you model your franchise after? I think Tampa Bay and LA, because two ends of the payroll spectrum, but the same minds, obviously coming over from the Rays, because it's just a top to bottom machine. It's not just about throwing money at free agents. They draft, they develop, they sign, they trade for, they have reclamation projects. There's nothing that this organization does that isn't top notch and genius, to put it plainly. And so I have the utmost respect for the Dodgers and the fact that it is not what everybody, I think from the outsider's perspective, getting back to that stereotype, they believe, oh, it's LA, it's top payroll, they're just buying success. And that's just not the case. That's just not it's not even like relying on top 10 first round picks. I mean, they go into the later rounds and they go into the bargain bins and free agency, and they continue to win and churn out productivity. So that's the full picture of the Dodgers, and that's how I view it.
No, it is hilarious. I was reading, Pedro Mora had a book that just came out about the Dodgers, and one of the things he said was, the rules are basically set so that teams like the Dodgers should not be able to do what they do. Like the Dodgers, Keith Law just ranked them the #1 farm system in the league. And it's like the Dodgers have been picking at the back of the first round for the last 10 years. They have the lowest international spending budget ever since they changed those rules. And yet every single year, it's like whoever the Dodgers pick in the first round, it's Walker Buehler. Now it's Bobby Miller. It's, these guys that all of a sudden they're top 5, top 10, top 20 prospects in the league.
Yeah, I think looking at the current roster, and the latest example of this would be Andrew Heaney, who I know is hurt, and hopefully it's not bad, and he's back soon. But when that signing was made, I think folks where I'm based in the Northeast were laughing. Yeah. Andrew, did they not watch him? But from my vantage point, I was like, watch Andrew Heaney go there and shove.
Yeah.
He's going to stop throwing one pitch. He's going to throw another pitch more, and he's going to have success. And then, in the early doses of that thus far in Dodger Blue, that's played out because, again, that's just what they do.
Yeah.
And you can hate them for it. The other aspect of this that I think is fascinating, Jeff, just on like the human element, I think people naturally lash out after overexposure. We saw the Golden State Warriors were kind of on the rise, and the Splash Brothers, and at first it was like, this is so fun. Steph and Clay and Draymond, like, this is amazing. And then after a while, you're like, okay, I get it. Splash Brothers, like, they're kind of annoying, and after every 3, and here they win again. Oh, now they signed Kevin Durant. See, this is the evil empire. Like, I hate. Yeah. So that's just kind of, I think the progression of human emotions for sports fans anyway. Once they feel like they've been exposed to something too much, they are like, I'm out. I hate it.
Yeah, and I think there's also the part of like a lot of fans know that their owners should be spending at the levels that the Dodgers are spending, or at least a lot closer to it, and are just voluntarily opting against it. And so your options are be mad at the owner of your team, or be mad at the other team that's doing essentially what your team should be capable of. And that's unfortunately an easy choice for most people.
Yeah, they're projecting. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
They're misplaced anger.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let me give you a few names because, again, I like talking to national people to get a healthy perspective of, what somebody who follows the entire league thinks about some guys. And there's 3 Dodgers in particular I want to ask you about. The first one I think is the most interesting, and that's Cody Bellinger. He's a guy who just won Player of the Week. He's a former MVP, and yet to most Dodger fans, he's the guy who hit 160 for the entirety of last season, struck out 50% of the time in spring training. This year, he's starting to turn it around. But I'm curious, as somebody who covers the game nationally, like what do you think the perception is? Do people think of him as MVP Cody Bellinger? Do they think of him as a flash in the pan Cody Bellinger? Where do you think sort of most baseball fans come out?
I think nationally, Cody's in this bucket where folks view this as kind of like a make or break year for his perception, if that makes sense. Like they don't know who he is because it's been such a roller coaster ride, hot and cold, up and down. Christian Yelich is in that bucket for a different reasons, just because he's had, back down years, and you wonder about the health. Like, okay, was that power surge just a fluke? Is he going to hold up? Like Bellinger's swing, he's constantly tinkering. I don't know how to pin him down. So people are trying to think who exactly Cody is. And when I was out at Dodger Stadium a couple weeks ago for the game, talking with Doc about it, and we had spent a good number of minutes on Cody, and I think he's the most excited for Cody because he feels like fatherhood has changed him, and he now has a different perspective, as we all do once we become parents, about not just the world, but about his career and handling success. Now he's seen the most success that you could have, and he's also kind of been at the bottom. An MVP batting at the bottom of the order like that, for any of us, that would be a shot to the system, a blow to the ego, and a out of mentally. So I still think the world of Cody Bellinger as a talent, and I'm glad that he's kind of gotten to this rhythm, especially after his spring training.
Yeah.
Right? After spring training, you're like, oh, no, like here we go again with. But that's where I think he is. I think the book on Bellinger will be written by most after this year.
Okay.
Let's see how he handles this season after such a volatile up and down past couple of years. So I'm really, as I've talked, I'm like, this sounds probably like a cop-out answer, but you asked me for the national perspective. I really think that's where people are at with him, because they don't know yet. And so this year is going to be really telling.
Fair. Okay, next guy on the list, different other end of the spectrum. It's Walker Buehler. And the question, the way I want to frame the question is this: among Dodger fans, if you start talking about the top 5 starting pitchers in all of baseball and Walker Buehler's name is not among them, it's like a riot is about to break out. I mean, this is a guy that a majority of Dodger fans love. They've seen him in the big moments. And yet, like, I think if I'm being honest, I look at his numbers, and he's been very good, and he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Does he belong in the top 5 pitchers? Is he a top 10 pitcher? Is he a top 12 to 15 pitcher? Where do you think Buehler falls? Because he's interesting in that he has the big game sort of MO playoff success, and yet the regular season numbers have been very good, but not quite like Max Scherzer level elite necessarily.
Sure. So he was my pick to win Cy Young this year. I don't vote on awards. If I did last year, he honestly probably would have gotten my vote. And that's like not to slight Corbin Burns. I understand why he won. I understand why people love Zach Wheeler. I understand why people wanted Max Scherzer. But I just thought that Walker's body of work last year, given the circumstances on the heels of 2020, the shortened season, his workload, that staff, with the absences, I could term, how he elevated his game and kind of buoyed the pitching staff as a whole. I thought that should have gotten more attention and respect from voters than it did. So I do view Walker as at least a top 10 pitcher right now. And then once you get inside that, then it becomes really just a subjective thing. Like, do you value the resume and the body of work? Because if you do, then you know what? Then folks might put Justin Verlander ahead of Walker Buehler, even though right now, in a vacuum right now, who are you going to hand the ball to? Who do you trust more for the length of this season? It would be Walker Buehler. Again, that's just me. So that's how I view him. And I do think that he's kind of just breaking through as a bona fide, tier 1 starter. Because you're right. Like, it's right now it's that Scherzer, DeGrom. Yeah. They're kind of in this different air. And I don't know what else Buehler has to do, because it's been a handful of years now that we've gotten to see him, not just in the regular season, but on the postseason stage, and he has got that, you attitude, and
Yeah.
he's an incredibly intelligent person, and he battles. I mean, he just gave baseball what's going to become a unicorn, and that's a CG.
Yeah.
So he's just a different breed. So I have him in that upper echelon. I would guess that on the whole, he might be looked at as a quote unquote second tier,
Yeah.
above those others, or below those others.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, even looking at some of the preseason lists, it feels like he's in that top 10 range, which, I think is fair. The last guy.
So let's go through it, you and I together. Okay, so you would say right now, would you say Max is the number one pitcher in baseball?
Yeah, I mean, probably. I mean, there's different guys on different days, right? Like, but Scherzer, just as far as like consistency, what you think. I mean, look, Scherzer, what he did when he came over to the Dodgers last year, he had that stretch that was like, is this the best he's ever looked? Actually, like for like a month and a half, it was just insane. So,
Stupid.
And yet, as Dodger fans, we were having the debate right before the playoffs is who starts game one. Like, if you had one game to win, do you give the ball to Buehler or do you give the ball to Scherzer? I mean, we were there, and
that's a huge sign of respect, like, of where Walker is at and where people think he can go.
Yeah.
So I start to stretch if I'm trying to name 10 pitchers better than that I would rather have than Walker Buehler right now. I would be hurting myself. Like, I would be like, that's kind of a reach, but I can justify it in my head. It's such a subjective deal. He's all Dodgers fans need to. He's their ace, and 29 other fan bases are jealous of that.
Totally. And the fact that, when you look at some of these guys, you're talking about guys that might be on the tail end. I'm just looking at like Buster Olney, for example. He put out a list that we did a breakdown of. And he had Buehler 6th on the list. So he had DeGrom 1, Corbin Burns 2, Wheeler 3, Scherzer 4, Cole 5, Buehler 6, and then he's got Bieber, Woodruff, Fried, and Robbie Ray kind of filling out. And, and you look at some of those names and you've got guys, that have done it in Scherzer, but a lot of these other guys like Corbin Burns, Zach Wheeler, it's like, I don't know if their it's not like those are guys that are like, well, they've done it for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we're mind melding right now. I would say, and again, with respect to those guys, I know as the Cy Young in his mantle from last year, but then now we're really getting narrow with our viewpoint, because those other guys I haven't seen them, for a handful of years, and again in the postseason, I haven't seen it, and so I will towards Walker in that debate between them. So that's where it gets tricky with those lists. But look, and Dodger fans, if they want to be upset about folks who don't have Walker in the top 5, I think that's within their right.
Okay, let me move to the third guy on my list, because he's number 11. He's the first name not in the top 10 on Buster Olney's top 10 starting pitchers heading into the year, and that's Julio Urías. So Buehler is a guy that coming into this, I was like, you know what? I think Buehler, he gets the credit. He's the opening day starter. He's done it on the postseason. I think he is widely accepted as a guy who is in that group. Urías is actually the more interesting one for me, the one I was more curious to ask you about. Because if I were to make a hot take on our show, and I've made this take before, I think there's an argument that Urías belongs on the same level. If not, I think you could look at some of the StatCast numbers, and there are numbers that say Urías is a tad above Walker Buehler. And again, Buehler, people, I think and I'm not saying this is unfair, the postseason success can overshadow what you think of him as a regular season pitcher, whereas Urías' regular season numbers have been fantastic, whereas the postseason stuff looks different because he's closing out Game 7 of the NLCS. He's closing out Game 6 of the World Series and doing that thing. And look, this isn't a wins debate, okay, just to put that out there. This isn't he won 20 games. We're not going to talk about that. But where does Urías stand? Like, do you agree that Urías maybe is on the other end of the spectrum, where it's like maybe there's a little underrating nationally with Urías?
No doubt. And I was going to, Walker gave us the CG unicorn. Well, I don't know how many more 20-game winners we're going to see in baseball. And Urías gave us that. So, look, I would agree with you. I do think that there is some underrating going on. I was having this conversation with a coworker last week, kind of the underrated aces of baseball. And my top 3 in no particular order, it was Sandy Alcantara, Urías, and Logan Webb. I feel like the national discourse around those three is below level of their production. Yeah. It just doesn't match up. For Sandy, I get it because he pitches for the Marlins, and it's just for the casual national fan to just kind of ignore them. Yeah. For Urías, it's easy to do because Walker won, and then also Kershaw two.
Yeah.
Or Kershaw won Walker two, depending on how much you value Kershaw's legacy as one of the greatest pitchers of all time. So, and then they had Max for a minute. The Dodgers have had other pitchers to garner lots of headlines. So there's a number of factors that kind of bump Julio down the list or down the thought process. And then Logan, just people get hung up on the Jesse Plemons doppelganger thing. I don't know, but he's really damn good. Now he doesn't have the lengthy track record yet, but the conversation was right now. So I'm with you that Urías is underrated. I don't think it's going to stay that way for long because the torch is already, if it's not in the process of being passed, or if it hasn't already been passed, it's in the process of being passed. From Kershaw to Buehler, and now there's going to be, that's the next one. That's an awesome one too. I mean, righty lefty, that's really special. So I think his day in the sun will come. I agree that it probably should have already happened.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're away from that.
I have to remind myself he's just 25. I mean, like, he's been in our life since he was 19, basically. He was the hot prospect at 16 and in the majors at 19. And so it feels like he's been around for so long. And admittedly, not all of those years were highly successful and he was injured and that kind of thing. But the last couple of years, and again, he's 25. I mean, we're comparing him against guys that were drafted 2 or 3 years ago.
And he had to mature.
Yeah.
And he would be the first person to tell you that. I know the coaching staff that's something that in the last 3 years of interviewing them in the postseason, talking to the coaches, like that's something that they're really quick to point out with Julio is, hey, he had to make some huge steps kind of away from the field just as a human being, and he has. And obviously he's come a long way as a pitcher as well. So that's a positive sign all the way around for him.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's transition a bit because you're part of this new thing that Apple TV is doing, Friday Night Baseball. The Dodgers were there in week 2, and I guess the nice way to say it, and you and I have had conversations about this, there's lots of opinions out there about how things are going, but when you and I have talked, you shared a bit more of a backstory behind kind of what people are seeing. So I guess the way I'll phrase the question is, what is the heartbeat of this? Like, you guys aren't trying to compete with Joe Davis and Oral Hershiser and the way they do a Dodgers broadcast. You're trying to do something differently. And so how would you describe what the goal of that broadcast is and kind of how things have come together the month before and the weeks before and into the season?
First of all, there is no competing with Joe. There is no competing with Joe and Oral at all. I will preface everything that I say by acknowledging that this is a subjective medium. Before, it is totally up to the individual. Person A may love a broadcast, the same broadcast that person B thinks is the worst thing they've ever heard in their life. So I've long known that working in broadcast is you're not going to please everybody. So when we got the schedule for Apple TV and Friday Night Baseball, and I saw Dodgers Reds to Jackie Robinson Day, I was like, we're in for it, because that is a day that deserves the very, very best. Not just for Jackie, but for the Robinson family. I think it's important for the game, and we tried our damnedest to do justice to his story and just give it the respect that he deserves. But that was a tough one, and we knew that was going to be a tall task going in. Now, Friday Night Baseball is a new venture. For those who missed that game or haven't tuned in yet, And the design of it be a zig to the industry zag. I think that the objective is to, one, have it be more conversational. Phrase that we've heard a couple of times in the lead up to the season was a podcast during a baseball game.
Yeah.
Jeff, you and I, as baseball fans, know that on the whole, baseball fans want just the actual baseball game.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. Again, that huge difference to what has been heard on airwaves for generations now. That's going to upset some folks because people like what they like. As humans, we're naturally resistant to change. At a restaurant, we have our favorite thing to order, and then you take that thing off the menu, you're going to be upset with the restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to speak to the manager immediately. You're going to go full Karen to wonder why my number 3 is no longer on the menu. So each and every week we're hopping into a new game and 2 new fan bases, 2 cities, and having to fight that uphill battle because their broadcast crews, that's their connection to the team. They feel like they know Joe and Joe, right? They feel like they know John Sadak and Barry Larkin or whoever would have been in there for that game for Cincinnati.
Yeah.
They feel like last week we had Oakland. They want to hear from Kite and Braden, so I understand that somebody who's, again, grown up a fan of the game and is a fan of the industry as a whole, that's, you're asking a lot of baseball fans here. So it's something that we're going to have to put in the time to earn that respect. And this experiment at the end of the day might not work out. We're throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, trying to build chemistry on the fly. I mean, the Hunter, Pence, Katie Nolan, and we met the day before our first game, which was the Angels-Astros game in Anaheim. So we're trying to get to know each other and build chemistry on the fly and try to earn the respect of diehard baseball fans across the country. It's I don't say all that to make excuses. Again, at the end of the day, even if people go into it with a patient perspective, you ask them at the conclusion of the year, they may look back and be like, I'm sorry, I hated it. I didn't like it. That's okay. But I'm just trying to provide context for what is happening throughout the year. So it's kind of, sorry for rambling, but that's kind of
it's helpful.
Best.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the podcast during a baseball game, when I hear that, I actually wonder, baseball of any sport sort of uniquely has a storytelling element to it. I mean, we look, as a Dodger fan, I grew up with Vin Scully, and all Vin Scully would do was basically tell stories for 3 hours. And so I think from that perspective, I can get it. But the part that I sympathize with you guys is you can't do a podcast with people you met for the first time. And by the way, like, you've got some experience doing games and stuff like that. But Hunter and Katie, like, I don't know. I mean, I know I've seen Katie on TV. I don't know if she's ever done a baseball game before. I don't know if Hunter has done analyst stuff. So it's like you're throwing stuff, like, it's like we're going to throw 3 people that don't know each other. We're going to try and have them do a podcast all during a game that, like, they've actually, it's not like, hey, I've called games for years. We're just going to zig a little bit off of the normal. It's like, let's just throw a bunch of stuff into a pot and see what happens.
No, you're right. No, that's totally fair. There isn't a ton of experience in that booth. And the difference, I mean, there is no comparing to Vin.
Yeah, true. We're spoiled. Dodger fans are spoiled, so we get it.
Think about it. We both grew up in Southern California. You had Chick Hearn, you had Vin Scully, you had Bob Miller as the voice of the Lakers, the Dodgers, and the Kings. That trio is, again, in rarefied air.
Yeah, and if you were Spanish speaking, you had Jaime Harin, who's, basically on the same level as all those guys.
Yeah, Jaime's a Hall of Famer. So it's there's no comparing that. But the point I'm trying to make is they put in time. There was a lot of time, sweat, and work that went into them building up that credit and equity with fans, that trust. We don't have that yet. And again, may never have it with some fans. And that's totally fair. I'm not time trying to twist people's arms. Like, please like. It's okay if you don't. Like, I'm actually one of those people. like criticism. I will seek it out. Hey, how can? Because that's the only way we get better.
Yeah.
It's the only way we improve. Where did I suck? Tell
Yeah.
me. Because I remember my mom would say like, hey, you could be the next. When Rob Fukuzaki is done at ABC7 Eyewitness News, like you can take over. I'm like, Mom, no, I can't. I'm in college. I love you. I love you, but I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
So you can't ask your loved ones for criticism. You need to like seek out, hey, who's gonna rip you to shreds? Yeah. And so that's what I've tried to do here. Like, hey, little things here and there. And Joe Davis, who I've gotten to know the past couple years, I was grateful to him and the time that he took, texting the day after, and I'm going to sync up with him here in a few weeks and kind of pick his brain, because I do really want to improve at this. I don't know if a long-term career cards for me, but I do want to give it a shot. And so the best way to do that is learn from the best.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's been, all that being said, even with the avalanche of criticism on social media and whatnot, it has been a really fun experience because it's different, and I like different. And I'm excited to see where we can take it and if we can settle into a rhythm here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'll say this, you don't have to respond to it, but it's also not your guys' fault that Apple TV, the setup is what it is, where, it's sort of like, if you want to watch Dodgers Reds that night, this is your option, and it's on Jackie Robinson. Like, those are all not decisions that you guys made, and yet you're the ones that end up getting crushed for that.
Yeah, that's way above, slightly above me, Jeff. That is way above.
Totally.
Me. Hey, we've all had jobs. We all have jobs and bosses. You can't be like, well, actually,
yeah,
I don't think I can do this job. No, you're gonna do the job to the best of your ability and let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah.
So again, it was a ridiculous honor, the honor of a lifetime, to call that game. I did text Joe. I was like, Joe, it should have been you.
Yeah.
But he knows the same thing that we just talked about. Like, it's those things are determined at a different level.
Well, and then some Dodger fans were just not going to be happy because Hunter Pence was on the call, so it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how he sounded or how good he was at his job. It was just going to be, that was that. I
hope that the next time, I believe, and sorry for those who already closed the book on us, we will be back in Los Angeles, and I hope next time we get some Pence signs in the pictures. Let's take Hunter back to his days as a visitor. We losing the fly ball during a no-hitter for Johnny Quaid. Yeah, whatever. Like, we need to turn up that rivalry aspect a little bit for HP when he's there.
Love it. Well, hey, let me get you out of here with a few just rapid-fire sort of questions, and then this will close it out. So, who's your favorite player in the league to watch? And if you want to do one hitter, one pitcher, you could do that too. But who's sort of your favorite? Or you could do Ohtani for both. I don't know.
It's actually become a tougher question because even though I'm from Southern California, my father's from Chicago, so I followed him for baseball fandom, and that's the Chicago White Sox. And my favorite player, I say, is Eloy Jimenez, and we just haven't seen him hardly at all a couple years because he hasn't been healthy. But I love players who play with just pure joy.
Yeah.
It's the cliche, it's a kid's game, and those who treat it as such, and they're just nothing but good energy, I gravitate to those players. So I would say Eloy, and I'm just so upset for him that he hasn't been able to kind of show off who he is. But taking my favorite team kind of off the table there, I would say Shohei and Mookie.
Okay.
Shohei and Trey. But I picked Trey to win NL MVP the last 3 years, and I'm gonna pick him every year until he does it, because I do think he's gonna win at least one. He's just that good of a player. So I'll say Shohei and Trey.
Love it. Yeah, the passion of the game. I mean, look, Yasiel Puig is on my shirt for a reason, and it's because I love the energy and the infectiousness of the way he plays. So you don't have to convince me on that one.
I hear you. All right, next up. Sorry,
no, you're good. You're good. Who's like your favorite or the best interview you've done, player-wise?
They're really good questions. They're simple, but
No, I know. And you're having to catalog through probably dozens, if not hundreds, of interviews.
Favorite favorite
Is there a guy,
player.
like if your bosses came up to you and they said, hey, Steven, we've got a guy, we need you to schedule for tomorrow. You get one interview. Who do you want?
Jesse Winker.
Okay.
Jesse Winker. I'm trying to get, like, again, beyond like the big name star that you could possibly pick. Jesse Winker, formerly of the Cincinnati Reds, now with the Seattle Mariners. Just as pure a human as you could meet in the game, just gets it, doesn't take himself too seriously, has an appreciation for where he's in the show. You kind of saw him, wear his emotions last year when he was named an all-star starter for the first time. So fun, and you can have fun with him, be sarcastic, joke around. So I would say
Love
Jesse.
It. All right, last question, and just because this is a Dodgers show doesn't mean it has to be the answer. But are the Dodgers your pick for the World Series?
I picked them to make it there, but I let my homerism take over. I picked the White Sox, which, as of the last week,
we'll let you change your pick. We'll let you change your pick today. Do you want to change that pick?
No, I mean, I honestly, that was just me trying to will the White Sox. Usually I like pick them to lose to like reverse psychology of the fan, because we're just demented that way as sports fans. But sure, I'm like, you know what? This organization needs to raise the bar. If it really wants to be considered a World Series contender and upper echelon team, then it needs to be talked about that. Not like, oh, we made it to the postseason for back-to-back years for the first time. No, enough of that. I would genuinely be stunned if the Dodgers aren't playing for another World Series. I just think that not only are they talented and that good, that clubhouse just has it. It has the mix. There's not necessarily one leader. You got everybody who does it in different ways, kind of earned their keep. They got enough dirt in their spikes, no egos, no BS, no drama, just about getting the job done. So I believe in that.
Yeah,
I do. Now it's a tough road there. The Giants looked like they're legit again. I don't expect the Padres to be trash like they were in the second half last year. Atlanta and the Mets are an issue out east. So, and it's baseball. Anything can happen. Expanded, anything can happen. But I really think that the Dodgers are. And that's not a unique thought, but I think the Dodgers.
Hey, you're not going to get any complaints here. We're not looking for unique thoughts. We're a Dodgers show. We want everybody to say it's the best lineup in baseball. I love the bullpen and I love the rotation.
That's the thing. Sometimes you go on, do an interview in whatever city, and you feel like you need to turn yourself into a mental pretzel to say some positive things and pamper a little bit. You don't need to stretch to.
Our guests don't have that problem.
No, not at all.
If somebody said otherwise, I'd be like, so which part? Is it the lineup? Do you not like, the Mookie, Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner? Is that the part that you don't like? Or Kershaw, Buehler, and Urias? Is not what Kimbrel and Trinan at the back end?
The third guy off the bench.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, fair. Okay.
Survive. We have somebody in our top-ranked prospect system who can come help us out.
Right, totally. Yeah. Well, hey, Steven, I really appreciate the time. Again, you can check Steven out at Intentional Talk on MLB Network. Again, Apple TV's Friday Night Baseball. We'll see him again later this season. So, Steven, best of luck the rest of the year, and thanks for your time today.
Jeff, I can't say thanks enough, man. We'll talk again soon,
Sounds good. Well, everybody, we appreciate you checking us out. As always, DodgerHeads on YouTube, on wherever you get your podcast, DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media as well. We'll see you next time.